As World War II ended with Germany's surrender in 1945, the world confronted the full horror of Nazi concentration camps. The discovery of emaciated prisoners, mass graves, and industrial-scale murder shocked even battle-hardened Allied soldiers. In the chaotic moments of liberation, a primal force emerged, not just justice meted out by courts, but raw vengeance from those who had endured unimaginable suffering. This script uncovers the untold stories of retribution at Dachau, Buchenwald, Bergen-Belsen, and Ohrdruf, where prisoners and liberators alike grappled with the limits of humanity. The creators reveal a chilling narrative of rage and retribution. These events, often overshadowed by formal trials, expose the raw human response to systematic evil. What drove skeletal survivors to take up shovels and guns against their captors? How did young soldiers, trained for war, react to atrocities they could barely comprehend? This is a story of moral ambiguity, psychological turmoil, and the cost of dehumanization. On April 29, 1945, the 45th Infantry Division, led by Lieutenant Colonel Felix Sparks, entered Dachau. Expecting surrender, SS guards lined up to negotiate, unaware of the fury awaiting them. The sight of rotting corpses and skeletal prisoners ignited an inferno of rage. When SS Commandant Hinrich Wicker stepped forward, an American soldier shot him point-blank in the eye, sparking what history calls the Dachau Massacre. Prisoners armed with shovels, picks, or pistols slipped to them by soldiers, unleashed years of pent-up agony on their captors. About 70 SS guards were herded to the coal yard. Many were beaten or killed en route. A machine gunner, briefly unchecked, mowed down 17 guards in seconds. Prisoners swarmed, killing around 40 more with whatever they could grab. Senior officers, conveniently absent, avoided war crime charges. Later, American firing squads executed roughly 60 Nazis, including hospital staff, totaling 346 deaths. That night, prisoners turned on the capos, collaborating inmates, executing around 300 in a brutal purge of betrayal. The Dachau massacre wasn't just vengeance, it was a reclamation of agency. For prisoners stripped of dignity, these acts restored a fleeting sense of power. Yet the chaos raised questions. Where does justice end and retribution begin? The creators note that the soldiers, horrified by the camp's atrocities, often looked the other way, torn between military discipline and moral outrage. On April 11, 1945, Buchenwald's prisoners, led by a disciplined international underground committee, seized control before American troops arrived. Composed of German communists, Soviet POWs, and others, this group had maintained secret networks, organizing mutual aid and preparing for revolt. As SS forces weakened, prisoners stormed watchtowers, overpowered guards, and occupied the camp gate. The uprising was swift and merciless, driven by years of starvation, torture, and loss. Captured guards faced a grim fate. Some were locked in punishment cells, others forced to kneel for hours before being pummeled to death by enraged crowds. Hanging, considered merciful, was rare. The creators highlight that neither the uprising's leaders nor the arriving Americans showed pity for the perpetrators of Buchenwald's horrors. The prisoners' coordinated resistance showcased their resilience, but their vengeance revealed the depth of their scars. For them, this was not just retribution, but a declaration of survival against a system designed to erase them. The uprising's success owed much to the prisoners' organization, but it also exposed the raw edge of human endurance. American troops, arriving to a camp already under prisoner control, faced a surreal scene of retribution. The creators emphasize that Buchenwald's liberation blurred the line between victim and avenger, raising complex questions about justice in the face of unimaginable evil. When British forces liberated Bergen-Belsen in April 1945, they encountered a nightmare: thousands of unburied bodies and typhus-ravaged survivors. Unlike Dachau's chaos, the British imposed a grim, methodical reckoning. 80 captured guards were forced to bury the dead, hauling decomposing corpses to mass graves without gloves or masks. Typhus claimed about 20 guards within days, a poetic irony for those who had presided over such misery. Survivors' diaries cited by the creators describe prisoners burning guards alive, hacking them to pieces, or beating them with their own torture devices. No mercy was shown, not even to the guard dogs, which were shot or beaten by troops and prisoners alike. The creators note that Bergen-Belsen's retribution was less spontaneous than Dachau's, but no less brutal. Prisoners, driven by years of dehumanization, reclaimed power through violence. British soldiers, shocked by the camp's conditions, often allowed these acts, their own moral compasses shaken. This slow, grim justice reflected the camp's unique horror, a place where disease and neglect killed as efficiently as gas chambers. The psychological toll on both survivors and liberators was profound. For prisoners, vengeance was a fleeting restoration of dignity, but it couldn't erase the trauma. For British troops, enforcing burial duties while witnessing prisoner retribution challenged their sense of order. Bergen-Belsen's liberation revealed the limits of restraint in the face of systematic evil. At Ohrdruf, liberated by the U.S. 4th Tank Division on April 2, 1945, most prisoners had been sent on death marches, leaving few survivors. Those who remained acted before Allied troops arrived. Captured SS guards attempting to flee or surrender were executed without hesitation. Some were shot with captured Nazi weapons, others lynched or beaten to death. The creators describe a chilling scene. Prisoners, fueled by years of torment, felt no sympathy for their former captors. Their vengeance was swift and absolute. When General Patton and photojournalists arrived a week later, they found a gruesome tableau: guards with crushed heads or shot point blank, their bodies dismembered. The creators cite photographs that captured this lawless retribution, a testament to the prisoners' wrath. Ohrdruf's small scale made its vengeance more personal, a direct confrontation between oppressor and oppressed. The absence of formal military oversight allowed prisoners to dictate their captors' fates, blurring the line between justice and revenge. This preemptive retribution underscored the prisoners' desperation to reclaim agency. For American soldiers, the scene was a stark reminder of the camp's horrors. The creators note that Ohrdruf's liberation, though less documented, was a microcosm of the moral and psychological chaos that defined these events, where human endurance met its breaking point. The vengeance at these camps stemmed from a profound psychological shift. Prisoners, subjected to systematic dehumanization, faced a sudden reversal from powerlessness to power. The creators cite Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl, who described the complex emotions of liberation: joy and relief mixed with overwhelming rage and a struggle to process freedom. For many, killing a guard wasn't just revenge, it was a reclamation of dignity denied for years. This act of agency, however brutal, restored a sense of self. Allied soldiers faced their own psychological crisis. Young men, unprepared for the reality of genocide, saw their understanding of humanity shattered. The creators highlight that military training didn't equip them for the moral ambiguity of camp liberations. Some soldiers, like those at Dachau, tacitly supported prisoner vengeance, feeling that normal rules of warfare were inadequate. Others struggled to maintain discipline, torn between legal obligations and personal outrage. The camps forced everyone, prisoners and liberators, to confront the limits of morality in the face of evil. Military leaders, including General Dwight D. Eisenhower, anticipated these challenges. The creators reference his 1945 planning documents, which acknowledged the difficulty of maintaining discipline amid atrocities. Responses varied. Some officers enforced military law, while others turned a blind eye. This inconsistency reflected the unprecedented nature of the situation, where no playbook existed for navigating the moral and legal complexities of liberating extermination camps. The Vengeance during camp liberations offers sobering lessons about human nature. The creators argue that extreme circumstances can erode moral and legal constraints, as seen in both the guards' atrocities and the prisoners' retribution. These events underscore the importance of legal frameworks, like the Nuremberg trials, which provided accountability without descending into chaos. While revenge offered immediate satisfaction, formal justice established a historical precedent against genocide. The Nazi camp system damaged everyone it touched: prisoners, guards, liberators, and societies. The creators note that the violence of liberation was a continuation of the camp's brutality, a cycle born of dehumanization. Understanding these events requires balancing the human desire for revenge with the need for moral frameworks. The line between victim and perpetrator blurred in these moments, but the fundamental distinction between genocide and response remained clear. These stories also highlight the resilience of survivors. Despite unimaginable suffering, prisoners organized, resisted, and reclaimed agency, however brutally. The creators emphasize that their actions, while complex, were a testament to the human spirit's refusal to be broken. The liberations remind us that even in humanity's darkest moments, the drive for justice, however imperfect, endures. The liberations of Dachau, Buchenwald, Bergen-Belsen, and Ohrdruf were not just military operations. They were reckonings with the depths of human cruelty and resilience. The vengeance that erupted was raw, understandable, and deeply human, born from years of unimaginable suffering. Yet it also exposed the fragility of moral boundaries in the face of evil. The creators' accounts reveal a truth. Justice, in its purest form, seeks not just punishment, but restoration of dignity, hope, and humanity itself. These stories linger as a warning and a testament. They warn of the consequences of dehumanization, which scars both victim and perpetrator. They testify to the strength of those who, even in their darkest hour, found the will to act. As we reflect on these events, we are reminded that true justice requires not just retribution, but a commitment to prevent such horrors from rising again. The echoes of liberation, furious, tragic, and resolute, call us to honor the survivor's pain by building a world where such vengeance is never needed.